Okay, Mr. Mayor, we are live and ready when you are.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting for the Seldovia City Council, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. Time is 6:03 p.m. and we'll go ahead and do roll call. Kennedy.
Here.
Swick.
Here.
Peyton. Okay, she is absent at the moment. Nathan.
Here.
Sweat.
Here.
Rojas.
Here.
Okay, we have 5 out of 6 council members present with Peyton absent at the moment. We do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started. And let's see, Rachel or Heidi, if you could lead us off in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Excused absences, we have none yet. So item D, agenda approval. We'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve tonight's agenda, second by Swick. Any further discussion on the current agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor, Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Peyton? Oh, she's absent. Nathan?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with 5 in the affirmative and 1 absent. Item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and 1 vote. The council member may request to remove any items for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. Tonight's consent agenda consists of, let's see, item 1, approval of minutes. We have none under there. Item 2, ordinance introduction. Ordinance 22-13A, a non-code ordinance of the city of Seldovia, Alaska, accepting FY 2023 fee schedule, Appendix A of the fiscal year 2023 budget, and that's found on page 5. Item 2B is ordinance 22-13B, a non-code ordinance of the city of Seldovia, Alaska, appropriating funds, Appendix B, annual budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022 and June 30th, 2023. So those are the 2 ordinances tonight that are being introduced. One's the fee schedule and one is the regular budget for the remainder of 2022 and then FY 23's complete budget. The next items consist of 3 resolutions. On item 3A, resolution 22-46, a resolution of the City Council of Seldovia, City Council of Seldovia, Alaska, establishing the property tax mill levy rate at 7.5 for fiscal year 2023. That's found on page 133. Item 3B, resolution 22-47, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, appropriating FY 23 community assistance funds. That's found on page 134. And item 3C, resolution 22-48, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, authorizing the acceptance of a State of Alaska Department of Public Safety contract for special services during FY 2023. And that's found on page 135. So does any member wish to remove any item for further discussion at this time? Okay, hearing none, then we'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion tonight by Sweat to approve the consent agenda. We have a second by Rojas. Any further discussion on the consent agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, Kennedy? Swick,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas.
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved with 5 in the affirmative and 1 in the absent. Okay, item F, mayoral proclamations, none. Item G, public presentation prior notice. I don't see anybody. Heidi, any changes on that? We're still good? Nobody signed up?
Nobody signed up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Public has 3 minutes each. Anyone from the public, either online or in person?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Okay, sounds good.
And Mr. Mayor, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I got you loud and clear, Laurel.
Terrific. Just a few things that are taking place this week and over the next week or two. It sounds like the Seldovia Arts Council will be having their members reception this Saturday night featuring the piano playing of Johnny, I'm losing his last name, but great rambunctious piano playing coming. And that is a reception where folks who are members get to attend, but also you can join right there at the door. So it's about $15, $20, not a big cost for annual membership. So that's happening on Saturday night. And then we are looking forward to our Memorial Day weekend, of course. And again, I mentioned the fam trip with Homer folks visiting on the 26th, Thursday. That's the day Seldovia Bay Ferry starts. And then that's also the day that will start the human-powered fishing derby. And there will be fishing over the weekend as well as on Sunday having the community gathering. So just a few reminders about those things ahead. And in the past, I have done some gatherings at the observation times on Memorial Day at the city cemetery. And we put some US flags out and then just have a moment of silence at 3 p.m. Sometimes the national anthem on trumpet, depending on if I've practiced. So just if the city is willing for that to happen again, I'd be glad to make sure that that gets advertised and takes place. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Laurel. Appreciate that. Okay, anyone else, Heidi, from the public that wishes to speak tonight?
I don't see any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, that'll conclude item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Item I, committee and advisory board reports, and I don't see anything for tonight. Item J, administrative reports, none. Item K, public hearings, none. Item L, unfinished business, none. Item M, new business, Jackaloff Bay Dock Uplands discussion. This will be the city manager leading this discussion. This will be found on page 140 of your packet. And you can go ahead and take it away, Rachel.
Thank you, Mayor. So at a work session that we had, it seems like a long time ago, but I think it was just last month, council had some questions concerning Jackaloff Bay Dock and the Uplands lease that's in place. Some of those questions were, the lease expires November of this year. Is there a right of first refusal to the current tenant? What would happen if there was interest from another organization in securing the lease that's set to expire November of this year? And what is the timeline for pursuing the lease if the city would like to submit its interest to the state? And so we heard back from DNR, and they stated that the lessee for the uplands at Jackaloff Bay Dock has submitted a preference right to purchase with the state's land conveyance section. So that means they're pursuing acquiring ownership of the uplands. And so until that application has been fully processed, the state said that they won't know the next step in that authorization. And then the state also said the lessee will have the ability to submit an application for lease renewal. So if the state elects not to grant the ability for the lessee to purchase the land, then they'll have that first right of refusal for the lease. And so the state said that at this time, there's no avenue for the city of Seldovia to submit an application to lease the land. So that's page 140 in your packet. And then following that is the actual lease document itself on page 142. That's where it starts. And then page 143 in very tiny font are the terms of the lease, the additional terms of the lease. So what caught my eye were sections 22 and 23, where it talks about how, upon expiration of this lease, the lessee desires to renew a lease on the lands. He should notify the state within 30 days and make an application to renew. And then it goes over, let's see. The lessee here under, this is section 23, shall be allowed a preference right to release the lands herein if all other pertinent factors are substantially equivalent. So those are the two sections of the lease where I saw their ability to renew. But other sections that I thought would be great to bring to the council's attention is section 7 on that page 143 states the lessee shall not commit waste or injury upon the property leased. And then section 15 says the lessee's rights under this lease may be terminated by the director in whole or part if the leased premises are being used for an unlawful purpose. And I don't know how the state would determine that, but that was something that caught my eye, as well as section 18. In the event that this lease is terminated, or in the event that the demise lands or any part thereof shall be abandoned by the lessee during the terms of the lease, the lessor may immediately enter or re-enter and take possession of the said lands. So those were a few sections that caught my eye, but I just wanted to bring this to the council's attention because at this time, it doesn't seem like there's a way for the city to try and secure the lease. But I think that if the city council wanted to, you could submit comments stating on behalf of the city, we're concerned about the condition of the land. We understand that you're looking to possibly sell the land to the current lessee. What would cleanup look like for that area? How would access to Jackaloff Bay Dock be impacted? Council could submit or direct the city manager to write a letter asking for those answers to those questions and see if there's an opportunity for the state to possibly reassume ownership of that land rather than either sell it to the current lessee or release it to them. So I just wanted council's feedback on that because it seems like time is of the essence. And so if you guys do want comments submitted, we could hopefully get that done by next week with council approval.
Okay, thank you, Rachel.
You bet.
Any comments or questions, discussion-wise from council?
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
questions for Rachel. Would we be able to, if we could word that properly, would we be able to maybe submit some pictures of the condition and direct it towards, the image presented and without, I think where I'm talking is, if they could see without having to come out here and see what we're dealing with, that might be beneficial.
Through the mayor, absolutely. I do have somewhat up-to-date photos of the area and can include that in the letter or comments to the state.
Okay, thank you, John. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement that we ask our city manager to write a letter and submit photographs of the area. And I think in the past, people have complained about it, but right now we're at a crucial moment where the lease is actually coming up. I think it's atrocious what's happening out there and has happened out there. And I think the state needs to be notified. So as photographs and a letter expressing our concern, I think we need to do that without a doubt. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
a question for the city manager. Uh, Is it actually possible that the state does not know what the condition of that property is? It's been like that for more than 20 years.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Nathan, I don't think so, because we received comment about the condition of the uplands from a neighboring property owner, and I forwarded those comments on to the state. And then in the entry authorization that the state granted the city so that we could do the appraisal and, do the Tidelands lease, that entry authorization stated that there has been comments received about the condition of the uplands.
And the state was surprised by that. Was that the upshot of it? I'm certainly not trying to back up on the ask for photographs and descriptions of the mess out there. I just thought it was odd that the state had no knowledge. It's their property and it's been like that for forever.
Yeah, I can't speak to whether or not they were surprised, but I do think that they are aware of the condition out there.
Let's make sure they're aware.
Thank you, George. Anyone else?
Yeah. Is there in the lease process itself, do they call on any kind of public comment? Is there an opportunity for the general public to say, hey, we don't like what's going on out there?
Through the mayor, yes, Councilmember Swick, I do think that we could submit comment, because I remember when we shared those comments with DNR that we received about the condition out there. I remember the specialist was like, we're not looking for comments yet for this lease renewal. So I think that, yes, there would be a public comment period. But I guess I don't know how the timing works for sale versus lease. So if the state agrees for the sale, I don't know what that would look like either.
Right, because I feel like there are plenty of people who would make comment. I don't know if that's our place to solicit those comments or put that out there, but if there is a way that that becomes public, I'm sure they'll get plenty of feedback, not only from us, but from people in the area of what's happening. And like George said, it's kind of crazy that they are not aware of this at this point, because it's always look like that. And they're the ones who, I know a lot of people complain about all the cars because those cars are on that land, correct?
Yeah, based on the comments that the current lessee submitted to the city when we were doing that public meeting on Jackaloff Bay Dock, they did comment about the derelict vessel or vehicles being on their leased land.
But they don't do anything about it. Do they not have the authority? That's what I always learned. People always complain about it out there, but it's always like, well, it's not my problem. It's not, I can't do anything about it. I don't. And again, people think that that's the city's issue because it's people that have been parking to use the dock. I get, well, some of them, but we don't have any control over that. I guess it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm not opposed to writing comment because obviously something should change, but I don't want us to be butting in where we shouldn't, I guess, as far as trying to get other people involved to say that it's not just, us versus them because we're trying to fix up that dock. I just be interesting to know how the process goes.
Yeah, through the mayor, absolutely. And then something else that I've heard a few council members say is that how it could be good for the community, for the city to have site control of that area and potentially not only work with the state or whoever as far as cleanup goes and who would be responsible for that, but also economic development. So turning it into an area where people could camp or recreate. So those have been other suggestions too.
I had one interesting comment on section 23 there, and it said that if the renewal lease does not require public auction, the preference right holder shall exercise his right within 30 days before the expiration of this lease by written notice. yada, 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 on down the line there. I just wonder if in the last 50 years, the state's procurement laws and, land use and lease tenant agreements and procedures hasn't changed a bit. And if there's something specific in this lease that, I mean, by that language, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't know, but if somehow it would have to come up, current to today's standards, maybe nothing's changed in the last 50 years, but I'd find that a little shocking if nothing had changed. And then back to, I had commented before, I think the state's been perfectly aware of the condition of that property. It's no different than like we talked about, the derelict parking lot across from Smoky Bay that, was in a shambles for years and years. And finally, I think enough people complained and, about it. And, whether the state was embarrassed or the city was embarrassed by the condition of that, I think, enough was enough. And finally, the state stepped in and, everything was towed off of there and it was chained up. So, and then a proper, new lease is going to be executed at some point, and hopefully the conditions of that piece of property will, be much improved and serve the public a lot better. And I think that's all we're looking for too, is that this piece out there is done, it appears that nobody has done anything with it in the last 50 years. I certainly don't know what it was used for, prior to me coming over here, in the last 25 years. But obviously in that time, not a lot has happened with it. And I think it could be served, much better served, in a different use. So, but yeah, I guess we'll let the cards fall how they fall here. But I certainly am in agreement that, yeah, a letter should be written and just at least spell out our concerns, and then see how it all plays out in terms of the lease or sale procedure with the state here.
So I guess to try and synthesize here, actually, before I do that, a question I have is, would the council be interested in the city stating that we would be interested in exploring land ownership of that parcel in this comment?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I guess we'd have to see how much it's going to cost, obviously. And I know our permanent fund was, we can use that to purchase land, but now that's going to be tied up. So where would we get the money?
Through the mayor, well, the first question, it would be just, I'm asking the council right now, like if the council would be even interested in seeing the city explore that with the state. And so if council says, yes, we just are curious in this letter, if you were to say, state of Alaska, the city of Seldovia is interested in exploring land ownership with you. We can leave it at that. And if that's a possibility, then we can get into those terms. So like sometimes municipalities ask for no cost. So, transfer of the land at no cost. So that could be something that we explore. But for right now, we're just sticking to, is that something the city should even consider?
Well, I guess I would want to hear about what the pros and cons are of leasing it versus buying it.
Well, I would rephrase that then. I would maybe say, instead of purchasing it, the city is interested in procuring the land, whether it be through lease or sale. It's not obligating us to anything. It's simply asking a question to get the information. It's certainly in the best interest of the public in terms of access and that, if a dock or any kind of facility was going to remain there. The bottom line is somebody needs to manage that because it hasn't been managed at all.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
I think asking the city manager to just inquire about it and see where we stand won't do us any harm. And then we need to have the conversation about where is it in the city's favor to even think about getting that land and where we're going to be. But I see no problem at all about inquiring and seeing where we're at. And I'd be curious when this new lease comes about, what are they going to charge? I mean, they've been only charging what, $380 or something a year. So what that new charge is going to be and what the purchase price would be. So I have no problem. I actually support, let's investigate what the possibilities are of acquiring that. And then we need to have that conversation. Is it something we need to do or going to do, or where are we sitting with Jackaloff? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. And the further follow on to Vivian, I mean, 50 years ago, I don't know what what was happening out there 50 years ago, but obviously some things have changed in the last 50 years, and that particular spot would definitely serve, probably be best served by a public use rather than a private use, just specifically where it's at, in it being that adjacent to the tidelands there. So it seems to make sense, to me, whether it's the city doing it or a private entity managing that entire thing. But I mean, they somewhat seem to go hand in hand out there. So I think it's definitely in our best interest to at least further explore the process. We're not looking to commit to anything right now, but it'd be nice to understand how this is going to play out, in the long run here.
Mayor Campbell,
Yep. Go ahead, John.
my answer to Rachel's question is yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
That's the simplified version. Yes. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, that whole ball of wax there is kind of tied to the dock, is it not? We probably need to consider seriously what we're going to do about the dock before we get too far down the road about the uplands there. I don't see any problem with inquiring, and something we might consider. I would imagine the state is going to have to do something with the mess before that land could be transferred either for a lease or a purchase. Maybe that's a handle we could use. We'd certainly be willing to clean that up if we were given some consideration in either a lease or a purchase of that.
Yep, agreed. That's a good point. Okay, anyone else before we go to the public? Okay, let's go ahead and go to the public, see if anyone from the public would like to comment on the Jackaloff Bay Dock Uplands discussion.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Go ahead and bring it back to council then. Is everyone, do we have any opposition to directing the city manager to go ahead and write a letter to further explore or inquire about the lease moving forward and or sale, and then expressing some interest to gather further information on that process?
Mayor, if I could summarize the points I would make in the letter.
Sure, go
for
ahead.
Clarity. Okay,
Yep.
so the letter would, state that the city is aware that the state is considering a request for purchase or a lease renewal, and that there was concern from the city about that, given the state the land is in. And so, the city just wants to make sure the state was aware of that. Asking questions like, if that land is sold or released, what would the cleanup look like for that site? I heard that this land would best serve the Seldovia community by having it for a public use versus a private use. So including that, state that the current lease that's in effect was for private recreation, and it appears that the land has not been used fully for that purpose, stating that based on the condition, it also appears to be for storage and abandoned vehicles. So I could make that statement. Share that the city would be interested in exploring what procurement of the land by lease or sale would look like. And what authority does the state have in ensuring the management of that land and working with the current tenant? Because it appears management hasn't been occurring of the lease lands by the tenant. So what does that look like? So that's kind of a summary of the points, but if I missed anything, please let me know.
Yeah, I think that kind of hit it on the head there. And then as you, get into that, I'm sure that some of those will be a little more basically elaborated on to, make it pretty clear.
You bet. And I would address the letter to the commissioner of DNR.
Yep,
As
I think
we-
that's appropriate. Yep.
Okay. So
Okay,
that's
any
what I got.
further comments to the manager before we close this one out?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
do we need a motion or can we just instruct the city manager to carry on with what we've discussed here?
I always appreciate a good motion, Councilmember Nathan.
Sorry.
I would move that the council instruct the city manager to proceed with the letter of inquiry to the state, including photographs and other information about the condition of the site and what might be done with it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Nathan to direct the city manager, have the city council direct the city manager in terms of a letter inquiry to the state DNR regarding the uplands at Jackaloff. We have a second by Rojas. Any further discussion on that motion before we vote? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor, Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
I
Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
I,
Rojas.
Aye.
Motion passes with 5 in the affirmative. And that will conclude item M1. We'll go ahead and go down to item M2. This is another discussion on ordinance 22-XX, amending Seldovia Municipal Code, Chapter 5.08, public soliciting and vending, and Title 18, Section 18.20.015, parenthesis 110. And this will be led by the city clerk, and this is found on page 148 of your packet.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this came up in recent conversation with an individual about vending, inquiring about vending on city property. And when reviewing the code, it became apparent that it hadn't been updated since 2017, and that the update that took place in 2017, there wasn't any follow through with it. So in 2017, the application fee changed from a $15 application fee and then $3 a day vending fee to vend in the area designated in code, which is between Lollipop Park and the Harbor Master's office. And now it's $100 an application with no daily fee. And so upon that discussion and further exploration, I wanted to bring this forth to council. First of all, just to recommend that the application fee be removed from the code so that it can be annually reviewed as part of the Seldovia fee schedule. If the council, and then the second consideration is if the council wants to continue to still offer vending on city land. The code does read that any vending on any city land requires an application, but it does designate that area. So is that area still the right area? Are there other areas that the council would like to consider in addition to or instead of that area? I've heard mentioned that possibly the row, the platted but undeveloped row by the Gateway Pavilion could be a good area, or maybe both are areas. And then, of course, it's been discussed it's been mentioned, what are the parameters of vending? And from history, it seems like the intent of the area was for people to be able to set up tables and tents and have multiple vendors in the space. So I provided language in the code to help facilitate that moving forward in the future, if that's what the council wishes. There wasn't a lot of language to help guide that space and how it was being used. So now you'll see the memos on a page 148, but if you look at the ordinance itself, there's new definitions that are included, like isolated or casual sales, vending, mobile vending mobile vending cart, mobile vendor, prepackaged food, transient merchant, hawking, and then just kind of reiterating that designated location, and that it should be that a permittee should be self-contained with a 10 by 10 area, which is the size of a regular canopy tent. Hawking and mobile vendors are prohibited in the area. Mobile vending carts are permitted only if they fit within the 10 by 10 regulations of the chapter and are not a licensed vehicle or licensed trailer pulled behind a motor vehicle. And then just more language for the permit application being provided by the clerk, that they can be revoked, and what conditions for that revocation. Permit expiration, so that puts a time limit before there wasn't a time limit for vending permits. So this is a 90-day, and it states that in multiple places under the transient or itinerant merchant and under the permit expiration part of the code. State laws are applicable. It includes language for that, violation penalties, and also includes an amendment to the definition under transient merchant under Title 18 to also be 90 consecutive days instead of 150. And there is a sample vending permit that follows if you want to look at what that would look like. And so, yes, the discussion is, yeah, do you guys want that area to continue to be vending, and what considerations would you like for the area?
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Yep, go ahead, George.
I have a little bit of the problem with the $100. It seems like a little old lady sitting under an awning selling handmade costume jewelry is going to be hard pressed to make $100 out of that in a season. Maybe is there any way we could make this tied to gross sales or some kind of way where we could make it a little easier for folks that have a very small as far as volume of sales that goes. Does that seem logical or something we could do without a whole lot of confusion and trouble?
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to take that?
Sure.
So I believe that the reason why the language was changed in 2017 from the $15 daily to $15 application, $3 daily, is because they had punch cards. It was very convoluted. They didn't know who was there, had paid, the management, especially for the harbor master's office, between the harbor master's office and the city office, of who had paid and who hadn't, was too much. And so they had changed it to $100 flat rate, whether you're doing one day or doing a whole season. My recommendation would be to go back to a daily rate, but have it be something like $15 or $20 a day. And at some point in time, it becomes so much that they might as well just have a seasonal permit. But of course, that is up to council. I don't know that we could ask businesses to turn in their gross sales to work out what it would be, but we don't even handle taxes. That goes to the borough. That's not something that we normally look into. It's what sales and taxes, individuals, and I don't know if that's where the city wants to be.
So then a daily rate with a cap on it.
Right.
so many dollars a day, and when you get to $100, that's it. That's all you have to pay. That seems a little better than the $100 right off the top.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, if
Yep.
Councilman.
Go ahead, Vivian.
Yep. Well, I think there's a couple of questions here. And one is that, for me anyhow, when we were going through the land use properties in town, city clerk and Bobby and I, the land that was next to Lollipop Park where the vendors were was in question in my mind. And we're trying to develop down by the pavilion with our kiosks a business district. So I would encourage us to move out of that area, no longer use that area between the Harbor Masters and the Lollipop Park as a vendor site. But if we're going to have a vendor site, one thing, we've got 2 kiosks that are sitting there empty. Maybe we should encourage people, if they want to have little sales, to rent those kiosks and or use a right of way that is there, and it could be a little retail area would be my idea. As far as the fees, I think we can navigate those and talk about those. But so my point is, let's move our business district together with where our kiosks are out and make that be our business area for vendors. And if we want to have vendors, and I think we really need to, we haven't had any vendors since, that group of folks that used to do it. No one is really doing it anymore. But again, we have 2 kiosks that are sitting empty. We should encourage our businesses that want to be vendors to possibly rent those. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else do you have some comments on this?
Mayor Campbell?
Yep. Go ahead, John.
I do. I have issues with the terminology of food services. And there are specific laws in the state of Alaska requiring, from the Food Commission, requiring certain types of food served. And I think our facility or our properties down there should mirror the cottage laws that are already in place with the state of Alaska. When you start dealing with servicing hot food or selling hot food, there's a whole lot more that goes into that. They've got to have proper water and sanitation and hand cleaning and all of that. So, and the space size of 10 foot by 10 foot wouldn't allow for that. I have no issues with them being able to, anybody being able to follow the cottage laws, but food services, I think they'd have to have a permit from the DEC.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you can, you've seen hot dog carts that are, in the 4th of July that are legit ones that have, water. And they've got a hand wash sink and, they don't have a 3-compartment prep sink, but yeah, I believe they are all required, even the seasonal.
Correct.
They have to have a DEC permit to operate that. So
that's exactly what I'm saying. Some of that should be in that verbiage.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Heidi.
It does talk about state, so 5.08.090, which wasn't in there prior, is state laws applicable, notwithstanding any provisions of this chapter. Any person operating under any license issued by the city pursuant to this chapter shall not be exempt from any and all licenses, permits, laws, or ordinances as required by the state of Alaska and the Kenai Peninsula Borough. And the application has always included that if they are going to serve food, they need to have a DEC license for it to be permitted.
Is there anything on there about disposal of water on our land?
That would, no, that has not been included. I think that it's whether they can get the DEC permitting. We have had people in the very far past, even before I was a clerk, who tried to run food services and had an issue with that. But I don't know that we are inspecting or in the place to inspect people's food services.
No, I get it.
That's what the DEC is for.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead, George.
I wonder if we might be better not encouraging food of any sort. Let's try to support the businesses that we have here that are fighting the good fight to be in that business and are permitted and so forth. And we can still have vendors. Let's just keep them out of the food business.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think we need to restrict that. I mean, I get it, but yeah, the cottage thing, you know, people want to, my mom's been down there and sold jelly before, you know, it all falls under that, the cottage industry stuff. I don't think there's, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Wouldn't think there would be interest in trying to figure out how to serve food, you know, because there are so many hoops that you need to jump through, and that's not for us to say, you know, you got to follow the appropriate rules. I think that's all we need to put, and if they can't, then they can't. So to move them the right of way, is it between the pavilion and these kiosks? Is that what we're talking that they would be in?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like that idea of moving them down there, and maybe it would encourage people to use the kiosks, especially if it's going to be a rainy summer, hopefully not. That they could make the choice, you know, because we put in that you could rent them for the day, right? Or the weekend or something. So maybe they know that it's not going to be nice and they can move into one of those for the weekend if they so choose, while still having their same locale. I also kind of like that it's empty next to the park, just as kind of nice over there without a bunch of stuff in it. Not to say that it wasn't fine over there. As far as the fee goes, I totally get why it's easy to put a permit fee on it and be done with it. You know, if people can sell a lot of money worth of stuff. I mean, tourists eat it up. They will cover their vending costs. And if they're not going to, they're not going to do it. $100 isn't a lot of money at all. And it makes it way easier on whoever's keeping track of it. I remember when it was a per day thing and you got so-and-so coming in and I want to pay for the next however many days. And here's my card, and who was marking it off. Maybe Layla was, I don't know. I wasn't, I know that. Instead of maybe a daily rate, I could see maybe going towards a weekend rate, because I'm sure there are plenty of people who just want to do over solstice or just want to do over the 4th of July or Labor Day or whatever. We could put that in there, I suppose. I don't think that getting into a daily is something we want to manage, and that's why I got rid of it before. But I could see maybe something shorter weekend or something, and then that's up to that person whether they want to. I don't know what kind of fee you would put on that. I suppose 4 weekends at $25 is the whole year anyway. So I don't know. I'm in support of 2 of them. I just don't think that we need to get into daily, because it's not. I doubt you're going to get many people that are just like, oh, it's Wednesday, it's nice out, I'm going to go down and see if I can sell some jewelry. I don't know. Yeah.
I'll just
That's
chime in. I agree on the placement. I think with you know, like Vivian and Jennifer moving it down, I'd be more in favor of it having it down in that district down there where the kiosks are at in the pavilion. It seems to make the kind of a more of a natural, be more of a natural spot and kind of centrally get the people down in that area. And then, yeah, the kiosks now, I mean, they're not going to get any more reasonable than what's proposed now at $30 a day, you know, $150 a week or $300 a month. yeah, if you want a reasonable spot to go do that, then go do it. And I'm the same way. I don't feel that we should be, plucking out certain certain types of businesses. If they want to do it and they can comply with everything, then let her rip. And yeah, I think these fees are even $100. I'm not opposed to for the 10 by 10 spot being the $100. Because I think if even a small cottage business, it doesn't take a lot to make $100 selling hot dogs these days. So, or selling, $35, pairs of earrings or, necklaces or any of that stuff. So, it's a simple way to make a little extra income and not, and try to maintain a little bit of overhead. Obviously, we've gone round and round on this before. It all kind of adds to the, charm and quaintness of a summer little town industry. So, and then the same thing, and those any sales generated, we're going to see sales tax off that, obviously, as long as they're, legit and, filing their sales taxes and stuff. So it comes back around, and more than just the little fee, obviously, from the use.
Mayor Campbell.
Yep. Go ahead, John.
Hey, I just wanted to reiterate, I'm all for anybody having an opportunity, and I just hadn't had a chance to read the work that our city clerk had done, and I just wanted to make sure that, that the folks that are looking for these opportunities are following the law and that of the cottage law and the food laws as far as that's concerned. And I am also in favor of moving it down there by the pavilion as well.
Okay. Bobby, what's your thoughts? You're the only one that hasn't spoke yet on this, I don't think.
Well, I'm in favor of moving it also over to that area. I think, I'm not sure how many vendors we're still going to get these days. We used to have 3 or 4 or 5 when everybody was still alive and kicking. That's changed. And, yeah, so I like the idea of consolidating all that sort of stuff right there between the kiosks and the pavilion and using the right of way. So,
Okay.
And then, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep. Go ahead.
So with the support of moving it to the space by the pavilion, then I wanted to ask if the recommended change of a 10 by 10 space and the prohibiting of licensed vehicles or trailers was still applicable, or if there was a space that should somebody be able to get the right permitting, that the city would be interested in the future. It is included in the code change that policies and procedures may be set by resolution of the Seldovia City Council. So this is something that could be explored or discussed in the future, but it does seem to come up every few years. If somebody wants to have some kind of a mobile vending, is there space or is it permitted on city property? I did also include it in the application because it's come up. The new application on page 154, I said vendors who want to vend outside of the designated vending area in an area bigger than 10 by 10 will need to negotiate the agreement with the city. Vendors are not permitted in an area bigger than 10 by 10 in the designated area. So just inquiring if that language is applicable or if there's, and we don't have to explore it tonight, but just something to think about in the future should that opportunity present itself again. I've seen other municipalities or areas limit like 1 or 2 or have multiple different areas that have that opportunity if that's something that the city wants to encourage. But I can definitely work on changing the language for that area. And that's my last question, is if that language should stay for the 10 by 10 and that they're not permitted at this time.
Thank you, Heidi. Anyone have any comments or thoughts on those specific questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask,
Yeah, go ahead.
just for clarification, I kind of lost a little bit of what you said. The question is whether or not we want to change the 10 by 10 or retain the 10 by 10 area for vendors, as opposed to, or including, do we leave in there the verbiage about trailers or something on a trailer? Is that what I understood?
Yes, I guess what I'm asking is right now, with the new language, it would limit vendors to a 10 by 10 area and no licensed trailers or vehicles. And that was had a lot to do with having the space of the area between Lollipop Park and Harbor Master's office. Just
Okay.
trying to maximize that space. So is that language still applicable for the other area? Does council want to consider having the option to have one or two larger vendors, or is that something that you guys want to leave the change in there for now, prohibiting that, and then have that negotiation still happen with the city in the future? And should there be need for it, then policy and procedure for the area and other types of vendors that don't fall under the code could be passed by council by resolution in the future.
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I'm good with the language the way it is, as long as we haven't, if we have an opportunity for that to come along, then we can chat about it then and negotiate that then.
Okay, thank you. Vivian, did you have a follow-up to that?
No, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, as John said, I also agree with the language. And I think that the city council at another time and the city office can deal with larger those trailers. But yeah, I see this area down here by the kiosk. Small 10 by 10s be just right. The larger trailer type thing you're talking about is something that can be dealt with at another time. So the language to me is fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, I would also agree with John and Vivian on that. I think I think the language we have right now meets the intent of what we're looking for, allows, the smaller mom and pops, if anyone who wants to come in that's got a little cottage thing, wants to make a few bucks and, do something, I think that works. And if there's a a larger type business or something that wants to come in and, set up shop on a bigger basis, then I think that's something that needs to be, reconsidered and looked at down the road. And I know that's fairly controversial, in some places, given the investments that all the other, businesses in town have had to make in their property, in their properties and stuff. So I know around, a lot of communities, you see a lot of the private vendors and stuff are situated on other people's private property, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think, when it comes to the city, we got to be, we need to consider that and be somewhat careful with that. So I think where we're at right now is probably a pretty good start, unless there was an overwhelming request that came into the city and then we had to, bring it back up to reconsider at a moment's notice or something.
So Mayor, just for clarification for the council, we're talking about removing that lot that's between Lollipop Park and the Harbor Master office. So we're going to strike that, and instead in its place, we're going to put the right of way by the Gateway Pavilion. So that lot we've been currently using is going to be off the table for now, unless there's a special circumstance.
Yep, I think that's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's go to public, see if there's anyone from the public that's got any comments on the discussion here regarding soliciting and vending.
Yes, looks like we have a Miss Laurel Hills.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you can hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Terrific. So I appreciate the discussion and had a few thoughts as you were going along. For sure, we have seen food trucks come into Seldovia and make their services available. It's been very sporadic, but it has happened. And so knowing that that's still an option is great, so that folks can negotiate with the city as far as getting onto city properties in order to do that. And that all of these things add to the flavor of Seldovia, as the mayor was saying. So I really appreciate that as well. I think from a chamber perspective, that's really important that that all of our businesses celebrate and embrace everybody's efforts in the community economically and adding to the lifestyle and what people experience when they visit here. Just to note, when we're thinking about vendors and our recent history of vending and how people might be doing their cottage industries, for sure, we're seeing that there's different avenues for people to sell their services rather than being at a table outside in the inclement weather, et cetera. And so, we know that people who used to be at a table now are doing their selling via eBay and using the internet and sending stuff on USPS or UPS. And then you have made, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you just made vending available inside of the farmers market model. So for sure, 2 food-based, plant-based booths inside of there, but also other people who would be able to vend. So when you think about fees to have somebody vend adjacent to that same building, just understand that might not be something that people are jumping to do. And with that, my last piece is just note that for events that take place at the pavilion that extend beyond the facility itself, if you did have vending taking place in that right of way, then where would you be looking to place any overflow? So a great example is the human powered fishing derby, and they have stuff that takes place in the pavilion, but also outside, and grilling and tables and lines and potluck and all of that. So if we were to return to a pre-COVID reality, that area was something that was used. So just those notes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Laurel. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And we'd have to make sure that that's managed. I mean, that right away, I know there, I forget if that's a 30 or 50-foot spot there. But obviously, depending on which side of the tree you're on, I mean, we definitely have to look at that area and see what it's going to take to, I know we had talked about before about there was a couple smaller trees there was, matter of fact, I think all those trees over there were invasive, but I don't know whatever happened with that. I see they're still there. So but yeah, those are good, great comments and things to consider, going forward here. Anyone else from the public, Heidi?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and bring this back to council. And so we've had a number of items on the discussion, relocating the space, the fee. What do we want to do? Is there any big serious items of contention here? And I'm assuming you guys would go back and do another draft, and we'd either have another discussion or it would just come straight to introduction. What do you envision on that? Either Heidi or Rachel.
I was envisioning that if council was okay with the language other than the area, that we would change the language for the designated area to the row between the Gateway Pavilion and the harbor parking. And then also change the language in the land use management plan to strike out vending from the area between the harbor master's office and Lollipop Park, and include the language in the Seldovia fee schedule. We can use council members Swick's example, because really that's why this is coming about, is somebody wants to potentially have vending for a special event. In the past, the city has allowed that, granted that they all have their DEC permits, and that's run through the chamber. I believe the chamber would check that off. Laurel can correct me if I'm wrong. That there would be like a deadline, and everybody would have to have their permitting by that date, and then they would be allowed to vend for that event. So we could include that language in the fee schedule of, $100 for the season, or $25 a weekend or special event, and then go from there. Does that sound good to everybody?
I just have one last question. so Laurel brought up the farmer's market. That's Saturdays. Is that how that works? And then the whole, we allowed for whatever it was, 2 non-grower vendors. So we're not in charge of that, right?
So sorry, I meant to comment on that. That's a great question. As the farmer's market representatives stated when they were here during the meeting, all of the vendors for the farmer's market will purchase a vending permit as well. So everybody in the area would purchase, they're just not paying for using the pavilion space, but they will still
They were
have,
all planning to pay that $100 anyway.
yeah, so they'll have a permit, and then they have to have a business license, they have to have a sales tax, they have to be legit with everything else. They just aren't paying for the pavilion.
Okay, so we're not the ones stepping in saying, hey, you get to come in this week with your necklaces, and you get to come in this week with, I mean, we're not the ones in that. That's the farmer's market themselves, correct? Saying these people are involved this week. Are they the ones managing that?
Yeah, so through the mayor, council member Swick, that resolution that was drafted states the city of Seldovia is not responsible for supporting the daily operations of the Seldovia Farmers Market beyond structural support for Seldovia facilities, i.e. the vendors are responsible for all appropriate signage, advertising, setup, and breaking down of the market. And I assume that also includes
Who's involved?
coordination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just so we're not right, because who's going to be the third person that gets kicked outside? That's not our problem. Okay, great.
All right, so any other questions, comments, objections to the or confirmation to what Heidi had just stated? Okay, and then that would come back before us at a subsequent meeting.
Correct, for introduction.
Okay. All right, I think, yeah, unless there's any more questions or comments on that, I think we'll move ahead with that route and then look forward to that, seeing that at a later date as an introduction, and then we have one more crack at it before final passage. Okay. Any other final comments or anything on that, Rachel, or we're ready to move on?
Nope, that was great. Thank you, City Clerk Gagel and council.
Okay, so that concludes item M2, and then that'll take us down to item N, City Manager's Report. We had none. Item O, informational items not requiring action, none. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. We'll start with Kennedy.
I don't have anything this evening.
Okay, Swick.
I just have a quick question, actually. Are we having a community cleanup day?
That's a great question. We decided internally that we are not going to do that this year. I haven't had a chance to reach out to the chamber, but based on staff capacity, we just figured no go this year.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But we'll still make all the resources available. So if someone wants to pick up a trash bag and gloves and help, that would be great. We'd totally welcome that. We just, as staff, can't go out there and do it this year.
Okay, thank you. Nathan.
Just kudos to the city manager and her staff on the grant application and successful application. That was some fantastic piece of work done by us amateurs. Good job.
Perfect. Thank you, George. Sweat.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is, I guess I could just bring it up. I'm wondering if the net cleaning issue got resolved. Anybody?
Somewhat. We're still working through that. We've had a number of discussions. We're still working through that.
Okay. And I too want to just comment on getting that grant. I think it's fabulous. I'm so excited that we actually got that grant. I mean, you guys did a great job. Great job. Thanks.
Thank you, Bobby. Rojas.
Yeah, I would also like to congratulate the staff. What a fantastic position they put Seldovia in to fix the multipurpose room with this grant. That was just a wonderful hearing that I got a call about. So kudos to you, hardworking folks out there at the city staff. Also, I'm looking out on the harbor parking area, and it's a beautiful sunny day, and I'm seeing lots of cars there. Could you tell me when we are going to have our discussion about the harbor parking fees? I've kind of lost track.
Absolutely. We've also been trying to figure that out and talking internally with staff. We've been right now focusing on getting signage up. So there's going to be signs going out at the harbor parking lot regarding, you know, what is long-term parking versus short-term parking. And so we're going to get those signs posted. And then once that happens, which is already in place with code, then we can bring the conversation back to council. It was a goal to have it during the budget work sessions that we had, but it just didn't happen. So it's still on the radar, and I can't give you an exact date, but it's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the great meeting, and actually a short one. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. I just had one question. What's the latest on the street sweeper? What are we hearing from the state?
So latest I've heard on that was from Jordan that now the state is hoping to get it to Seldovia on the ferry in June. I believe the first ferry in June, and it'll be here for 2 weeks.
Okay, so June 12th or 13th, whenever that one is. Okay. Okay, and then we'd have it until the following ferry, so we'd have it all cleaned up prior to the 4th of July and everything. And then hopefully prior to solstice even, obviously, if it makes it in, so. Okay, I would just say that, yeah, if it, for some reason, weather or whatever, if it doesn't make it in, we might have to look at plan B, so. All right, no, I think that's is what it is for the moment here, so. Yeah, same thing. And yeah, congrats on the grant. Obviously a lot more to come on that here over the next few meetings. So next meeting will be regular meeting will be held on May 23rd at 6 p.m. Yeah, do we have a work session somewhere prior to that, or is that the next meeting?
So no work session, but an executive session at 4:30 on May 23rd.
Okay, so that was okay. All right, 4:30 on that same day. Okay. All right, if nothing else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any objections? Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys have a good night.
You too. Good night, everyone.
Bye.